time to continue with our next speaker. And I've been really looking forward to this because I think it was in something like February, March of this year, a new book about this understanding came out called Instant Motivation. The surprising truth, the surprising truth behind what really drives best performance. Was it right? So, the book, you can buy the books from there, so go check that out. Anyhow, so I read this book, and what I loved about it is how sort of it made it all so simple. Oh, how simple you can make something like this. So simple. But not only that, it was backed up by research. And there was some research done by the author to kind of back up, what she was presenting. And yeah, I just loved the book. And then I read the book. I was like, all right, I want to have this person speak at this conference. And so I sent her an email, and it was a yes, and she's here now. So it's my honor to introduce soon Chantal Burns, the best-selling author. She's also a very successful consultant, coach, and teacher. And one thing she wanted me to kind of mention is that she has taken this understanding to Japan as the first person, and really she's travels all around the world, giving workshops and just kind of like in different organizations. So she works with organizations, with leaders, and basically just like pointing them towards this same understanding we are exploring here. And so yeah, let's give it out to Chantal Burns.
Wow, I can feel the power of thought taking form. Can I just go to the toilet? My heart's going. I thought it would be quite cool if you could put a microphone there and just hear it. It's like, I was standing there and I could feel it. Cool. Yeah. It's nice. Kind of feel alive. Well, it's great to be here, and I'm very appreciative of being invited by the lovely Nico. I was thinking about where I wanted to start. When Nico asked me what I wanted to speak about, I was probably one of the last people to submit my overview. Like, I'm just going to sit with it for a while, see what everyone else is doing, and then decide. And then I saw what other people were doing. I'm like, oh, but I wanted to talk about that. Oh, but I want to talk about mine. Then go first. There's the lesson that the universe keeps putting my way. Go first. So I thought, well, instant transformation sounds nice. Not sure what it means, but it sounds nice. I always start with a title. So I choose a title that's juicy, and then I think, okay, now what is that about? I go into a little process of inquiry. I guess because I wrote Instant Motivation, I thought I'll play with the instant. But there's an interesting story there, because the title, Instant Motivation, came from the publisher. And when they pitched the title to me, which they did very elegantly, sold me the title, Jamie was one of the first people I called after. I was like, I'm not sure about this title, what do you think? And she said Instant Motivation. I was like, I was thinking, I don't like that. I'm going to be careful what I say because I don't know who's going to watch this. I was like, I'm going to just say it anyway. It's no editing. It's very Paul McKenna, I'm just not sure. And then instant motivation, and I was like, that's not it, And then I thought, my next thought was, he sells thousands and thousands of books. It's a great title. But my question about the title was, well, and then I had the thought, God, I'm such a prima donna, because I heard the words coming out of my mouth to my editor of this global publishing company. it's a little bit reductionist, this title. Like, and I heard myself saying it, and I thought, shut up, Burns, just shut up. You know, just go with it. And I went away, and she gave me all the reasons why she thought it was a great title, and they were good reasons. And I went away, and I had, you know, some chats with a couple of people. And then I sat with it. I sat with the title. I thought, instant motivation. You know, I'm all about sharing this paradigm, these principles, as best as I can. Is motivation instant? Is that true? And it's funny because I did some research, and I saw, this is all preamble, by the way, till I'm getting ready to really start. This kind of just warms me up. No, but this is it. This is all I've got. I don't have anything else. Shit. It's just going to be an hour and a quarter of preamble. I did some research online into instant motivation, and the first thing I saw was a blog post or some article or something entitled 7 Steps to Instant Motivation. And I'm like, really? It's instant, but it's going to take 7 steps. I'm like, okay, maybe we have got something here, you know, because, you know, Jamie pointed to it so many times, and the other speakers are going to point to this so many times, but motivation is a feeling. It's energy, it's a state of mind. It's not a thing. Change isn't a thing. Change is thought. It's not a thing. And so as I was thinking about the title and whether it was a good fit, and obviously I was retrospectively trying to talk myself into it, so there was already an inherent bias in my thinking, because I'm like, I've got to find reasons to get with this title. But as I sat with it, I started to have some insights and realizations about the nature of motivation. Also, because I wasn't writing a book about motivation, that's the other thing. The other thing was, but I'm not writing a book about motivation, I'm writing a book about state of mind, principles, leadership, performance. Now it's a Paul McKenna book about motivation, and he would do that so much better than me in that way. So I thought about it, and I thought, no, actually it's perfect. It's perfect, because motivation, confidence, resilience, love, all of those experiences that we have, you could describe them as a state of mind, but mind in the big sense. A state of mind, a state of the intelligence that evolves through us. So motivation is just a description of that intelligence, of that incredible energy moving through us, manifesting in a particular way that we describe as motivation. There is another way of describing being alive. You know, I was speaking to this lady the other day. She said she invited me to come and do a talk for a bunch of HR directors. We have an organisation, I don't know if it's global, I think it's just in the UK, the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, so they contacted me to do a talk. And she really wanted to get the copy out quickly and start marketing it. And she said, well, can you just give me a title? Just give me a title. I'm like, oh God. Okay, I went, what about instant transformation? Because I thought, I'm doing that here. Just reuse it. I know I'm going to say something completely different. Who knows what I'll say, but the titles. She said, it was so funny. I thought she was going to say, yeah, I love it. And she said, oh, I don't like that. I was like, shit. Okay, God, I hope everyone in Helsinki, does it matter? Anyway, it's a stream of consciousness. This is how I live my life. But I just say it. But most people keep it in their head, and I just, if you can ask my partner, who's here, I tend to say it out loud. This is what I told you. It's going to be an hour and a quarter of this. So I hope this is okay for you, because this is all I've got. So she said, I don't like that. I said, okay. Why? I didn't say why. She just told me why she didn't like it. She said, well, I think people are going to think that, if they turn up, something like, if they turn up like a size 16, they'll leave a size 10. And if they turn up with brown hair, they'll leave with blonde hair. And I was like, and again, no editing. I said, really? You think people will really think that? I actually said that. You think people really think that? Or is that just you? I know how to win friends and influence people. She said, I think that might just be me, and she laughed. I was like, oh God, I got away with it. Talk not cancelled. So I said, well, why don't we just call it Instant Motivation, the title of the book, I'll share some of the insights from the research, blah, blah, blah. And she said, yeah, that's brilliant. So I pulled off another overview of a talk I'd done recently called Instant Motivation and gave her the blurb, and she loved it, and it's all good. Because it's not in the blurb, right? It's not... I got so attached to what I'd told Nico I was going to talk about. We were having dinner last night, and I said to Rudy and Jenny, I don't know if I want to talk about this anymore. I've changed my mind. They're like, you can talk about what you want to talk about. I said, no, I've promised to talk about change. And I've got all these plans, which I didn't have at all, really. Just a few lines on a piece of paper, right? So like, well, you could just talk about anything. And then Jamie heard, and I asked him a question, and he went, something else. And I just realised, it's just all bullshit. It doesn't matter. It's whatever. We're all pointing in the same direction. It just doesn't matter. I saw all that thinking. I had so much thinking about it. So busy-minded. I couldn't see it. It didn't look like thought. It looked like it was about the promise of what I said I was going to say. We're all the same in that regard. I wrote a book, I did the research, I've got the t-shirt, and I forget every day about how my experience works. And then I just thank the universe when I remember. Thank you for reminding me. Thank goodness it works that way, because I would really be in trouble if it didn't. So, by 17, I would describe myself as a high-functioning neurotic. I was a very high-functioning neurotic by the time I was 17, 16, maybe even 14, 15. I know that it happened quite early. See, now I'm getting a bit neurotic about what age I was when it happened. It really matters. Was I 14, 16? I remember being told so much about who I was and being described. Oh, she's this, she's that. She's not very academic, but she's quite streetwise. She's very practical. She's very loyal. And my dad left when I was young, so I got some abandonment stuff handed to me as a gift that I would probably have to deal with later. Thanks. I was fine until I was told that. Then suddenly I had issues about my dad. And actually then I really did get some issues about my dad. And I'm not saying it was the other person. I mean, maybe there was something there, who knows, right? We're all connected. We're all made of the same energy, so we kind of share it around. So I felt, I don't have any major kind of tragic stories. I had a reasonably lower middle class kind of fairly comfortable upbringing, single parented for quite a long time. But I didn't go without. But I had a lot of anxiety, and it's funny because if I say to people that I know now, people who know me well, if I say I can feel quite shy sometimes, I'm quite shy sometimes, they'll think it's ridiculous because I'm an extrovert, right? But when you start to see behind the ideas and the labels and the descriptions, it really levels the playing field. I can be extrovert one minute, I can be shy the next. It's interesting, I was thinking that when I was a baby, because the personality typology, Jamie sort of started to point to personality in his talk, which was beautiful, by the way. The whole domain of personality has been very interesting to me. As a consultant and a teacher, I have spent years working with organisations and learning how to use all these different tools, how to administrate all these different personality diagnostics. But I'm pretty sure that when I was a baby, you know, I don't think the nurses went, "Oh, there's an extrovert one there," or that's not a very self-expressed baby, you know, or that's a type A if ever I've seen one. You know, I'm not sure that was the case. But we learn all these models of personality, and they can be helpful. They can be helpful, but the more I learn, and the more insight I get into the nature of being human, what it really means to be a human being, the less useful those things look. And it's interesting because, and I don't know, I'm sure there's some consultants or people that work in business here and might be able to relate to this, but you'll get people that will use those typologies. You know, it can be quite useful. It can be a way to, you know, for example, I can't lead that project. I'm an INTP, you know, Myers-Briggs, for anyone that, you know, knows about that. I'm an INTP, so I couldn't possibly lead that project. It's 4 letters. It's a model. It's a model. It's a heuristic. It's a rule of thumb. It's not truth. It's not who we are. But we treat models like those as if they're truth, and then we can inadvertently live out of them, you know. And I've seen that happen. That's probably happened to me, I just haven't thought about it in that way. Well, I'm extrovert, so therefore that means something about how I should behave, or how I should make myself smaller somehow, you know. So I wanted to speak to that a little bit. I was thinking, well, why does change matter? What is the meaning of change? What's the purpose of change? And I had all these ideas. I mean, if you think about it for yourself, you know, if you ask yourself that question, what is the purpose of making changes, of changing? You might have things that you want to accomplish, goals that you want to achieve, changes you want to make in your life. But then it occurred to me, well, but why? Where are we trying to get to? And it kind of reminded me of what Jamie was saying, and I was thinking about it. Like, where are we trying to get to? For what purpose? You know, making changes. Is it not just to get back to a place of peace of mind and groundedness and feeling connected? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to accomplish things, or wanting to make changes. Sometimes we need to make changes, but our wisdom tells us that we need to make a change. So I was thinking about, well, maybe there are dimensions of change, and I can speak to those. That's what came to me. So there's some dimensions of change. I thought maybe I could speak to those. But first I have to talk about fleas. Is that a universal word? Is that how, fleas? Everyone knows what a flea is, right? Okay. Well, who knew that fleas were, could teach us so much about life? They're incredible little things. And I wrote about this in my book, and it struck me that I wanted to share this with you. fleas can jump really high. Did you know that? Did you know they can jump 100 times their own height? Incredible. I'm such a geek, I even went into the detail of reading about how is that possible. It's because they leap off from their feet. I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but it's true, basically. I like to check my facts. It's a fact that fleas can jump around 100 times their own height. So if you're 6 foot tall, well, you can do the maths. It's like 160 feet, right? You'd be able to jump the equivalent of, if you had that. No?
600.
Is it? 100 times? Oh, I'm terrible at math. Edit. Just edit that bit. Ego alert. Anyway, very, very tall, very high, right? So it's interesting, you may have heard this, if you put fleas into a jar, put some fleas into a jar, poor little fleas, and you put the lid on, they'll jump up, keep banging their little heads, and up and up. All I can imagine is banging their tiny little heads on the lid over and over and over again, right? Keep trying to get out and liberate themselves. Because they can jump really high, and they're stuck in this tiny little space. And if you take the lid off, what do you think happens? I can see you, What happens if what do you think happens when you take the lid off? Just guess. Just say something so it looks like there's some interaction. For the video. Huh?
They don't jump out of the jar.
Yeah. They just keep jumping up to the height of where the lid was. Isn't that incredible? They learn really quickly that they can't go any higher, even though for their whole lives, however long their little lives have been, they've been jumping 100 times their own height. And then suddenly, they're liberated, totally liberated, and yet innocently constraining themselves. And I kind of thought, wow, we're a bit like that. We're like that. We're just little fleas that can't jump as high, And the lid, in our case, is our understanding of how life works. Right? That's our lid. And our understanding of how life works can innocently constrain us, or it can liberate us. And for me, even though I can get a bit crazy sometimes. I can get really busy, I can get really crazy. But understanding something about the truth of my experience is so liberating. And that's why people get so inspired to share this. How can you not want to share the best kept secret about the human experience? How can you not? I've been searching all my life. I was never good enough in my head. I was too little, I wasn't academic enough. I wasn't really one of the bright kids. I left school early. I didn't go to university, but I wanted to go, but I probably wouldn't have made it anyway. So I'll go to college because I could do that. And when I look back, I had so much of that going on. But then I found something I was really interested in, and I was able to really kind of get into that. But I still felt like I had to overcompensate somehow. And then when I decided to start my own business, and it's funny because people often say, you teach the thing that you most need to learn. I definitely, in my case, have been teaching the thing that I most need to learn, without a doubt. When I started my own business, I was really interested in helping people, in sharing what I knew. And I'd been in the commercial world. I'd been in sales and commercial management, and I'd learned quite a lot about business, and I'd learned about team leadership. I'd learned some really helpful, useful stuff. And I'd been, pretty successful in that area. So I wanted to share that. And the direction I ended up taking was sort of into the psychological realm. But what was really interesting to me was when I would try and help people, when I was teaching, I saw that people were so focused on changing behaviour, changing their behaviours. And now my clients, that's what they talk about, how we need to change this team. What do you need to see different? We need them to be we need to change their behaviour. This is kind of the most, or was the most popular dimension of change, the behavioural dimension. Rituals, skills, do this, do this, do this, do this, you'll be great. So one of my clients, so I'm going to call her Susie, because she might watch this, and she needed to change her leadership, the way she was leading. There were issues with her team, they were demotivated, people were leaving. She was really good at her kind of craft, what I would call her craft skills. But in terms of leading people, she was failing in the respect that people didn't want to be led by her. And so the first line of change that she came across at work was advice about some behavioural changes she could make. For example, have more one-to-ones with your team. Delegate more. Open up a bit. She was given lots of really good advice about things she could do differently. And nothing changed. Because her team didn't really want to have one-to-ones with her. So they didn't make it very easy for her to spend time with them. And when she did spend time with them, where she was coming from wasn't a great place. So she was going through the motions of doing the behaviours, but because her thinking hadn't really moved on, it wasn't really working out. And it's interesting because I was thinking about my running, a guy called Michael, this lovely, lovely guy who he was my running coach for a while. Because I'd never done anything more than like run for a bus, at school, run for a bus. That was the most running I'd ever done. And then I decided a few years ago I wanted to do a 10K. And that's universal language, isn't it, a 10K? Like a 10K run, right? And I knew I needed help. And whilst my lovely partner wanted to coach me, I just thought I needed someone impartial who wasn't invested in my success. So I took Michael on. And Michael told me stories about all his rituals, that before he competes, he lays all his stuff out on the bed. Like he has all of these rituals the night before a race. So he won't speak to anyone, he won't talk to anyone. There's only certain things he'll eat. He has to have all his stuff on the bed in like a particular way, all folded up, all in a particular way. And some other things as well. And it works for him. But if I offered that to Andy or to someone else I knew, oh, do that and you'll be ready for your race, they might think I was mad. Like that. It works for Michael because it's born from his own insight. It's tailor-made. It was a tailor-made strategy for him, right? That's why it works, because it's perfect for him. But even then, It doesn't mean it'll always work. It'll work as long as he thinks it works. Because it's not the ritual that gets him ready for the race. He gets himself ready for the race. But he has like some teddy bears. He has some things he does that's part of his ritual, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just wouldn't want to think that the ritual is where it's at. It's helpful to understand that why it works is because it came from him. That's why lots of the strategies we read about, they worked for the author at one point because it was the author's insight. And then they think, well, this might be useful for people, so they bottle it up. And then they offer it to people as this is the 10 steps you need to take to build trust with your team, or this is, these are the secrets to being, a great parent. Because they've learnt some stuff insightfully, it's worked for them, and they want to share it and pass it on. But the beauty is, we all have access to that, like Jamie was talking about. We all have access to that. We get changed from within. We have an endless, unlimited supply of new potential coming through us. And it might look like a ritual, and it might look like a process. It doesn't matter, but it comes through you, and it's tailor-made for you. But we think the strategy or the thing is it. That's not how it works. So what I noticed when I was starting to run my business was the psychological domain was becoming really popular. And companies were getting really interested in mindset and attitude and getting people to think differently. There was more and more appreciation for the psychological dimension of change. This was particularly interesting to me because I was still searching. I was still a bit broken. I still needed some fixing. I still had issues, and the behavioural stuff, well, there was nothing going on there for me. So I'm like, oh great, there's a psychological domain that will help me change and will help me change my clients. And the kind of mantra was, and still is in a way, is like, if you change your thinking, you can change your life. It's change your thinking, change your life. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'm into that. I kind of always felt like thinking was important. It's interesting, I did a piece of research. I really wanted to unearth how do people really understand their own experience? What can I learn? How can I help to point to what we teach in a way that people can hear it, in another way, in a supportive way. And if I were to ask you in this room, how important your state of mind is in terms of living a fulfilling life, making changes, performing well at work, and you had to rate it from 1 to 10, and 1 was at the lowest end of the scale, and 10 was at the highest end of the scale. So 10 was like it's crucial, it's really important, and 1 was like it's not important at all. Just think of a number now. What would your number be if you were to rank it 1 to 10? How important is your own level of clarity, your feeling state, your state of mind? How important is that? And taking into account your number, just give me a show of hands if it's sort of from 1 to 5. No? Okay. 6 to 8, 6 to 7, 8 to 9. I'm not really seeing hands. I'm sort of seeing the odd finger here. 9 to 10. Okay, right. So just put your hands up again. If it was a 9 or a 10, put your hand up. Okay, now look around. Yeah, okay. So most people recognise that their state of mind, their level of clarity matters, right? Most people recognise that. So I'm like, oh, good. One down, another 35 questions to go. Just hope the rest of it corroborates my thinking. So one of the other questions I asked, and you'll know some of these if you've read my book, you'll be aware of some of this. Another question I asked was, when you don't perform to the best of your ability, what's the main reason for that? You think about that for yourself. When you don't perform to the best of your ability, what's the main reason? What would be at the top of the list for you? So shout out what you think was up at the top of the list. You know, the top 1, 2 or 3 things. What do you think was at the top of the list?
State of mind.
Huh?
If I don't feel good about the thing I'm doing.
If you don't feel good about the thing you're doing, yeah. What else?
Being disorganized.
Being disorganized, okay. More?
Too busy.
Too busy. More?
Tired.
Right. What else?
I'm not in my highest state of mind. Then I perform really bad.
Yeah, you're one of the enlightened few from the research study.
Coach Academy.
Okay, well, okay, you're an outlier then. Yeah, so we had outliers, you know, we had 10 to 15% of people answering in that direction. And the top answer was if I'm feeling stressed, anxious or worried. Right? If I'm feeling stressed, anxious or worried. And where was state of mind on the list, do you think? Was at the bottom of the list. So state of mind was at the bottom of the list. Now that's interesting because, as Jamie's talked about already, feeling stressed or anxious or worried is a state of mind. But for many people, and this is the challenge, this is the human challenge that we have, is the misalignment, the disconnection between how life is really working, how experience is working through us and how we think it works. That it would be at the bottom of the list. Now if I were to ask you, well, those times when you felt stressed or anxious or worried, what have you attributed that to? What would be at the top of your list? Those times when you felt strung out and stressed or worried or anxious, what are the kinds of things you usually blame?
Circumstances.
Yeah. Anything in particular?
Work.
Who said that? His voice is projecting through the front row. Like a ventriloquist dummy or something. You speak and he opens his mouth. Yeah. What else?
Relationships.
Yeah. So the top 4 answers were workload, deadlines, not enough time, and other people or relationships. They were the top 4 as the reasons why people felt stressed, anxious or worried at work. Right? And they had the option to answer, to choose how I'm thinking about things or my own state of mind, and that was at the bottom of the list. So how I'm thinking about things was at the bottom of the list. So you see, this is what we're up against. This is our challenge, guys. This is it. Our thinking is so invisible to us as a factor in our experience. It gets left out of the equation. And when it gets left out of the equation, it creates problems for us. But that's okay, because that's just the logic of how the system works. It works perfectly, like it's set up perfectly, it works perfectly. It does exactly what it's meant to do. It's just that no one gave me the manual. I missed the manual, right? I didn't get the manual, I didn't get that explanation until 7 years ago. Because I knew thinking was important, but I didn't understand the pivotal role that it's playing in our entire experience. So, coming back to this idea of, this change your thinking, change your life. I got involved with NLP. I studied lots of schools of thought, schools of psychology, and I got really, really good at helping people change their thinking. Until something happened. Until, I don't know, their boyfriend left them, or until their boss started being an arse at work, or until, and then I'd get another call, or then I'd be asked to come in and, do another intervention. Like, it felt really dissatisfying, because, I want to get great results. I do. I want to help people, but I don't want to help people, for an hour, or a day, or a week, or a month. I wanted it to be more sustainable than that, but I didn't know anything else. I didn't understand how to really help people. That was the best I had, and I was pretty good at it. But it was the best I had. And I'll give you an example of something around in this domain. So the kind of new stuff now is the whole kind of positive thinking. The new kid on the block, I've noticed, is gratitude. That's the new, practice and attitude of gratitude, right? So I'm always interested in trying things and kind of really testing my own understanding and really exploring things. It's really great to explore and test things against your own experience. So I downloaded the app because it was very cheap, it was like a few quid or something. I thought, I'll download this app, 3 things to be grateful, something like that. I don't want to say the name in case, but it's something like 3 things to be grateful for, the app. I got it on my phone. And day one I get a message on my phone, time to be grateful. Oh, okay, I'm quite excited because I love technology, it's like a new app, I'm like, oh, time to be grateful, I quite like this. So, you have to put down 3 things I'm sure that no one in this room has got an app like this or has ever used an app like this. I'm sure you haven't. Yeah, right. So, and there's nothing wrong, I'm not dissing it, let's wait and see whether I'm dissing it or not. I'm not sure yet because I haven't finished. So I think, okay, I had really nice, it was my mum's birthday, like a couple of days before, and I took pictures of her, and we had a lovely lunch, and I adore my mum, and every moment with her is so precious, and so I was already filling up with love, and I put the picture of my mum on, and I wrote a little note, and I love my mum, we had a lovely time, and I thought, okay, I've got to do 2 more. So, okay, what's the second one? I thought, I love my garden. Anyone that knows me and sees the only thing I really put on Facebook are pictures of my flowers. That's pretty much all you're going to get. So I'll put a picture of one of my flowers. I love my flowers. So I put my flowers on there. I love my garden. You have to type a bit in as well if you want to, so I'll type it. Oh, what's the third thing? Okay, third thing. My relationship. I'm very grateful for having a lovely relationship. Oh, Andy's so wonderful. Right. So that's day 1. And yeah, I'm feeling really nice. Like this is good. I feel loving, and I feel good. And so anyway, and I go back to work. Back to work. Anyway, day 2. Time to be grateful. Like, oh really? I'm so busy. Do I have to be grateful now? Do I really have to be grateful right now? But it's pinging on my phone, and it gives you a second and a third alarm just to make sure you don't miss being grateful, guys. So I opened it. I'm like, okay, I'll take a break. Probably a good time to take a break. So I open it up, and I find something. This time, it's so funny, I've got a strategy now. So this time, I go through my photos and I look for something that reminds me that I'm grateful. Right. It's hilarious. It didn't seem so hilarious at the time. It's really earnest and important that I do this. So I find a picture and I make a note, and then the second thing, I don't know, my cat, whatever, I love my cat. Second thing, so grateful, my cat hates me, but I don't care, whatever. And then I can't think of a third thing. Like, oh, fuck. There must be something else that I could be grateful for. I'm not even I couldn't exaggerate this if I tried. This isn't even I couldn't exaggerate this if I tried. Oh, I can't think of anything. God, really? Am I that awful that I can't think of a third thing to be grateful for? Right, this is what's going on. Like, oh, forget it. 2's enough. Put the phone down, carry on with my work. I think you can see where this is going, guys. 3rd day, time to be grateful. Oh, I hate this app. Bloody stupid be grateful app. What a pile of shit. So I cannot hear this pinging off one more time. And then so I delete the app. 3 things to be grateful for disappears to app heaven with lots of other apps of a similar ilk. No, not similar, but kind of similar. It was a really great learning. I learned so much from that. It was hilarious. It's like, I had a client phone me once. We were checking in. I'd been working with her for a while. She was a leader in an organisation. And she'd been really touched and impacted by learning about her experience, learning about the relationship between thought and feeling, understanding more about the potential that she was connected to and yet wasn't her, but that yet she had access to. She was really seeing so much, and it was really moving her and really helping her in her work. And so we had a call just to catch up. I'll never forget this. It was just a lovely, lovely conversation. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, great, I'm doing great. I said, okay, good. And I'm just like waiting for her. And she says, I'm so grateful for my life. I could just hear. It was so heartfelt. She was just so full of gratitude. She said, I've really got a great job. I know I moan about it, but actually, and my family are amazing, and I've got so many good friends. And she just went on and on and on about all of these things she was grateful for. Totally unprompted. No gratitude app in sight. Right? That makes total sense to me now. Because it's a natural implication, it's a natural byproduct of a free mind. It's a byproduct of a shift in consciousness. You know, when we see something fundamentally new about our life, not about the specific details of our life, because that's irrelevant, actually, and that's the domain of that's the psychological dimension of change. Kind of trying to manipulate and deal with the circumstances or our thinking in relation to the circumstances of our life. But when we see something fundamental about how life works, which is what she was seeing, she felt freed up. Her mind was just devoid of all of the ongoing concerns and anxieties that she'd been holding on to and carrying for the longest time, which she thought were just normal and part and parcel of being a senior person in an organisation and having lots of responsibility and having a busy life and being single and not wanting to be single. And it was just, she'd had so much going on mentally, and suddenly loads of that was just disappearing because she was seeing something more fundamental about her experience about life, how okay she was, really how okay she was. She couldn't spend time on her own in her flat because she didn't feel comfortable being on her own. So she would have to stay busy, making plans. And as she started to gain a new perspective about the role that thought was playing in her experience, that the only discomfort the discomfort that she'd been experiencing on her own was just the disquiet of her own mind that was creating feelings of unrest which she couldn't be with. She couldn't be with, so she wanted to distract herself. Now on one level that's wisdom playing out. That's wisdom in a way taking care of her. But when she started to understand what was really going on, she was able to start spending time on her own and enjoying it, enjoying her own company, enjoying her flat, saying, oh, I was pottering around my flat and I did this, and like complete switch. The gratitude doesn't come from the apps, the happiness doesn't come from the bank account, the good feelings don't come from the nice weather. There's even research now that proves that it's not the weather. I saw a piece of research recently that said people in, and I can't remember which state it was, people in this place who have lots of precipitation, lots of rain, they're just as happy as the people in California, apparently, according to the research. So it's not the weather. It looks like it's the weather. So in the psychological domain, we try and change our thinking. And then something happens and we need to work on our thinking again, or we need to manage a situation again, and it's just this ongoing improvement game, constantly. And I remember I did a training quite a few years ago, and this was a really stark moment. Again, I didn't understand how powerful and important this was until many years later. But I was doing an influencing workshop with a bunch of people in a business, and I was teaching them reframing. I was teaching them ways to reframe, to be more flexible with their thinking, to change their thinking, because that's what I knew. That's what I knew could work, and I wanted to give that to them. So I set out this exercise, and I say, think of something that's been bothering you, or until now, and you'd like to have a new experience of that, whatever it is. You'd like to see it differently. You'd like some new insight into it. And then I gave them a series of instructions of what they could do with that. And now ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself these questions. What could be positive about that experience? What's a different spin you could put? So guiding them to change their thinking. So this girl puts her hand up and calls me over. She's like, I'm really struggling with this exercise. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, because, and someone in her workplace had done something and she was really upset. She was really disturbed by what had happened. And she said, well, it doesn't matter how many different spins I put on this, I'm still not okay with what this person's done. See, this is the limitation of working on our thinking. It doesn't deal with the cause. It just addresses the symptoms of what our own thinking is creating in us. So she still, in her mind, fundamentally believed that the feelings she was experiencing in the moment were coming from what this person had done, which was in the past at this point as well, were coming from this person and what this person had done. And I didn't know how to help her any more than I had. I didn't know what to do with that. So she left, as did everyone else. She left that training, she left that workshop, still believing that her feelings, that her feeling state, that her level of clarity, that her okayness was somehow at the mercy of, or at the very least shaped by, what this person had done. But the only time we can experience any feeling is in the moment of being in our thinking. Can't come from anywhere else. If I'd known this then, I could have pointed her to that. I could have helped her see something more fundamental. That would have really helped her, because she could have moved on and been in a better place, and then she would have known what to do about the situation. See? There are so many implications when we don't really understand how our experience works, or when we forget how it works. You know, there's a perfect, beautiful, intelligent logic that plays out through us. So I want to go back to Susie. I was thinking about Susie and this leader who was really struggling with her team. She needed to transform her leadership. This wasn't about having more one-to-ones and delegate. She needed a fundamental shift. And she'd been down the traditional psychology route. She'd done some really good management trainings and she'd learnt some good stuff. But she was still struggling at the point when I met her. And the first thing she saw, the first thing we talked about, was the role that her own clarity of mind, the role that her own state of mind, the role that was playing in how she viewed her team, her work, her life. She was incredibly stressed out. She was, her confidence had been really knocked because she knew there was a performance issue. And she knew, so this is the kind of example of when change is kind of thrust upon you. She knew she needed to make a change and she didn't know how to. She tried everything, she didn't know how to change. She thought this is my personality, this is it. You know, and I'm an INTP and maybe I just shouldn't be doing this job. You know, she had all these ideas about herself. She described herself as painfully shy. So she had all these reasons for why things were the way they were. And then all she did was see one powerful thing about the nature of her experience. The first thing she saw that really shifted her was that nothing outside of her own mind, nothing outside of her own thinking could make her feel a particular way. That how she felt and how she was thinking was independent of everything else. And she saw that because she looked at other managers and other leaders around her, and they were in similar circumstances and they were having completely different experiences. So she tested what she was learning against, you know, her own experience and looked at what was going on around her, and she saw, well, hang on a minute, that person's not freaking out, that person's not really anxious, that person's really close with their team. Maybe there's something in this. There's something beyond the psychological dimension. And I don't have any other way of describing it other than there's a spiritual dimension of change. It's just a label. It doesn't really matter what, you know, that's the best I could think of when I was thinking about this. There's a spiritual dimension of change where we go from flat earth thinking to spherical, or whatever the proper word is, because I know it's not round and I know it's not spherical is another word. But it's a fundamental shift. We can't unknow that once we know it to be true. Like Jamie was saying, that's the power of principles. That was huge for me. That was huge for me. Oh, these are not just nice ideas. These are truths, they are facts. Whether I see it or not, whether I realize it or not, there's a logic, there's an intelligence at play. I really have nothing to do with it, but I get to use it, I get to experience it, I get to benefit from it. And I get to not benefit from it when I don't understand how it's working. So when I forget where my experience is coming from and I'm attributing it to my partner or my to-do list, or my client hasn't responded to me, or whatever. When I forget, I'm going to experience the results of that forgetting. I'm going to experience that in the moment, in the form of all my anxiety and self-doubt and or tension. I'm going to experience my forgetting. So that's how it works. And then when I remember, it settles you down again. As soon as you see, oh, that's where it comes from. It's not out there. life always looks scarier when we think that the causes of our unrest are out there. It's going to look like a scary world if that's where we think it is. You know, we're always changing. You know, the idea that we need to force that somehow, or we need to manufacture that somehow, is just not true. I mean, we've all been changing from the moment we were born, and we will continue to keep changing. Like Jamie said, we're designed to evolve and change. There's an inevitability in that, and that's how it works. Now, when it comes to making changes, wanting to change things in your life or have a different experience of life, it's really helpful to understand where your experience is coming from, to see what you think that change is going to bring you. Because if you're looking for that change to resolve something about how you're feeling in life, it's not going to do that, because that's not where the resolution is. The resolution is within. It's just to understand more about how your experience works. So there's lots of things that I've accomplished or that I'd like to accomplish, but the minute I start to think that making that change is going to make me happy, then it doesn't go so well. I get pretty stuck. It gets really difficult and unpleasant, and the fun goes out of it. When I know I'm okay, as we all are, that would just be a fun thing to do. It's a completely different experience. Completely different experience. And most of what I plan to do doesn't happen anyway, and most of the stuff that does happen is totally unpredicted and not really planned. So I keep being taught that too. It's interesting, as part of the research I asked people, what causes a bad day at work? Where do you think my own thinking was on that list? At the bottom. So I thought, okay, I'll ask them what causes a great day at work. We'll see if we get anything different. My own thinking, mindset, state of mind, at the bottom of the list again. It's so invisible to us. It's so invisible to us. That's why it's so helpful to understand how it works. Like Jamie was saying, making it visible. When it becomes more visible to you, it can't help but change you. You don't change, you get changed. You evolve. Your understanding evolves you. It's a lovely process in that way. That's why change is so much easier than we think, because we make it difficult with our thinking. We complicate it. It's not. I mean, there are difficult circumstances that some people are in. Absolutely. But our capacity to have our best ideas or be able to deal with that situation with clarity, with perspective, that is really helped by understanding about these principles and how they're playing out in your life, which is the same for everyone on the planet, by the way. No one's special in that regard. We're all the same in that regard. So I was thinking, change is a thought. Change is thought, it's not a thing. We turn thought into a thing. I had that insight when I was writing the book. I really had to delve deep into my own understanding. Like, what do I really know to be true about this? We turn thought into a thing. Our entire experience of life, it looks like it's out there and we're recipients of it, but yet we project like a projector. We project our thoughts out there onto a person, onto the shoes. Project my thoughts onto Jamie's shoes, and suddenly, I'm having an experience of Jamie's shoes.
Try and control yourself.
I'll do my best. We have the incredible capacity, the gift of being able to create anything. But it's really helpful to understand that what you describe as your circumstances are really things that you've attached your thought to. They become part of your outside life, your circumstances, but it's always thought. We put thought outside of ourselves and then we forget that it's thought. And it somehow looks like some kind of fixed reality out there in the world. And yet the thing that we're really having a relationship with moment to moment is thought. And we get to experience it. We get to experience it as this three-dimensional, incredible thing we call life. I still just keep seeing that more and more, but still finding it incredible. Incredible. And I'm grateful sometimes, but only once today. No one's going to tell me when to be grateful. This is the other thing. I'm like, no one's going to tell me when to be grateful. Don't tell me when to be grateful. I'll be grateful when I'm ready. But that's it. We're grateful when we're ready. We change when we're ready. Insightfully. In the moment. Instant transformation. Is that true? Is transformation instant? Yeah, I think it is. We're changing our mind all the time. We're changing at a cellular level all the time. And one insight, one new thought, one realization can change everything. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it looks like miracles when I see it with my clients. It still seems like this leader, Susie, transformed completely from being someone who was almost out the door to someone who was loved by her team. Loved by her team. It was the most perfect textbook case study I could ever have. And I really wanted to take responsibility for it. I really did. So good, I'm so good. I'm like, oh. I knew that was going to happen at some point. She slapped the mic and broke it. It didn't really have anything to do with me. I helped. Of course I did. I nudged and pointed and loved her and, connected with her and listened and felt my own neuroses and saw my own stuff, and together we kept seeing something new. She fell in love with her team. She realized, and there was no, we didn't talk about how to be a good manager, or we just talked about how thinking works, how thought works, how, that thought and feeling are the same thing. They're not two separate things, they're the same thing. That was huge for me. I really thought I understood something about psychology until I learned this. Thought and feeling are the same thing. I remember coaching someone in Japan, really smart guy, really smart, and we had a couple of hours together, and he was having an issue that he wanted to resolve, and we started to talk about, I wanted to understand, where do you think your experience, I wanted to understand how he thought it worked. I wanted to see, what was going on for him. And he said, I just don't want to feel like this. And I said, well, where do you think those feelings are coming from? What do you think's going on there? And he started to share with me about the situation. And I said, what if I said, I don't know exactly what I said, but it was something like, what if I said that thought and feeling were the same thing? And I remember he looked at me and he was quiet for the longest time. It's like, I was like, I know. it's insane, isn't it? He said, and I'll never forget this, I have a terrible memory generally, but there's certain things that stand out in my memory, like when Sarah phoned me and said how grateful she felt, and when this guy said to me, I have been on so many courses, I've worked with psychologists, this guy was smart and he was a searcher. He said, I have never heard anyone say thought and feeling are the same thing. I was like, I know. Me too, I hadn't heard that until, And then we started to talk about the implications of that. What does that mean for you if thought and feeling are the same thing? If it's a completely independent system, independent from this thing we call life circumstances, issues, challenges. I mean, isn't that the most, to me that just seems like the most liberating thing we could understand. That nothing outside of my own thoughts can make me feel sad, happy, angry, irritated. That it's all just thought coming through me, creating this response in my system. I love that. I love to keep knowing that, relearning that, seeing it even more deeply. And the thing is that we all know this. We all know this. We've known it at different points in our life. I've got to stop thinking about this because it's making me feel angry. I need to sleep on this because if I, You've had tons of experiences of knowing this. But for me, I didn't know it as a 100% truth, the no exceptions. Principles, they're principles. They're facts, they're not good ideas. I didn't get that for ages. I kept thinking it's still really nice concepts. But they're not, they're truths. We think. When we think we're going to feel, instant. We have the ability to know ourselves as thinkers. We have the ability to be aware and to grow and to change, to evolve naturally. These are facts. I like to argue, don't I? Yeah. It's good to give me something I can't argue with. I can't argue with the fact that I think. I don't think very well sometimes, admittedly. If there are so many implications, and lots of these will probably be touched on throughout the rest of the talks, and I want to start to wrap up now, but, for Susie, because she didn't understand where her experience was coming from, and it looked like her team were underperforming, it looked like she had too much going on, it looked like she couldn't trust them because they weren't delivering. As soon as she saw that all of her own anxiety had nothing to do with the team, as soon as she started to relax into herself, she started to really connect with her team. She started to listen to them. I didn't talk to her about listening, connect. I didn't talk to her about any of that stuff. I didn't talk to her about, and it astonishes me still that we didn't talk about any of that stuff. And yet all of those things happened quite spontaneously from her own insights and realizations. She started to realize, oh, I never really speak with my team. I'm not really connecting with them. I don't even know who they are. She'd been shy, so she didn't feel like she could really share herself or be vulnerable with them. When she started to see something about that, she started to open up a little bit more. They got to know her, she got to know them. And just so many things changed for her, all from a single insight about where her experience was coming from. And, you know, Elaine has, I mean, I don't know whether she'll share them or not, because they may not be relevant, but she has incredible stories of people that have been, you know, suffering with addiction, and she's seen incredible transformations. You know, there's lots of people here who, whether you've been involved with the principles or not, you've seen people transform. You may have experienced that yourself. You have to ask, what's at the cause, what's at the root of change at that level? It can only come from one place, from inside. So change can be very easy when we get out of the way. Because I can make the simplest decision, and Jamie knows about this, I can make the simplest decision so difficult, right? Yeah.
Let me think about that.
I can make, that's what we can do. That's what we can do. But the more we understand, the simpler it gets. I don't really, yeah, that's it really. It's my really untidy clothes. And that's it. I've got nothing left to say. Thank you. I hope this has been helpful or interesting in some way, and I look forward to chatting with you all over the next day and a half, and I'm really looking forward to listening to everyone else. So thank you.